Saudi Arabia paid Cameron Smith $100 million to walk away from the PGA Tour. He was 28 years old. He was the reigning Open champion. He was ranked second in the world. And he said yes. That was 2022. Since then, he has missed 6 consecutive major cuts. He has gone 35 straight LIV starts without an individual win. The tour that paid him that money just lost its $5 billion in Saudi funding and is fighting for survival. And the door back to the PGA Tour, the one that opened briefly in January 2026. He looked at it, did the math, and shut it himself. 3 months later, the Saudis pulled out anyway. This is the story of the most consequential bet in modern golf, and whether Cameron Smith is about to win it or lose. In August 2022, 3 months after Cameron Smith won the 150th Open Championship at St. Andrews, he signed with LIV Golf. He was the reigning Open champion. He was the reigning Players' Championship winner. He was the second-ranked player in the world. He was 28 years old and had just become one of the most marketable young talents. And what made his decision different from every other defection before it was simple. Every other player who had left had a reason that made sense on. Dustin Johnson was 38 and had not won a major in years. Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka had been beset by injuries. Patrick Reed's form and popularity were declining. Smith was the first player to leave with everything still in front of him. He was not running away from anything. He was, by every measure, running toward something, and the entire golf world stopped to watch. His stated reasons were the schedule and the family. He had small kids. The LIV format meant fewer weeks away from home. The money helped. He admitted that. But the lifestyle pull was real. In a phone interview with Golf Digest at the time, he said the financial lure played a role, but the schedule was what ultimately drew him in. Saudi Arabia paid him an estimated $100 million to defect, making it one of the most significant player acquisitions in the history of professional golf. The shockwaves that followed his signing were unlike anything the sport had seen. Smith did not just join LIV Golf. He legitimized it. He proved it could attract a player in his absolute prime, and that changed the conversation entirely. What followed over the next 4 years was a story with 2 completely separate chapters running at the same time. On the LIV side, Cameron Smith was a success by every metric the league cared about. He captained Ripper GC, the Australian team that became one of the league's most beloved franchises. He won 3 individual LIV tournaments. He earned an estimated $50 million across 4 seasons on top of his signing bonus. LIV Golf Adelaide, the Australian flagship event he helped anchor, drew over 1,100,000 spectators across 4 days in 2026, a new attendance record for professional golf in Australia. As a commercial property and a team captain, Cameron Smith was exactly what LIV Golf had paid for. The problem was the rest of his career. Smith's major championship form collapsed almost from the moment he joined LIV. He missed the cut at the 2024 Open at Royal Troon. He missed every major cut in 2025. He missed the cut at the 2026 Masters with rounds of 74 and 77. 6 consecutive missed cuts in golf's biggest events for a player who had won the Open Championship at the home of golf just 4 years earlier. The last major in which Smith had even survived to the weekend was the 2024 U.S. Open at Pinehurst, where he finished tied 32nd. The narrative was no longer about whether he had made the right call. It was about whether he could still play. Outside the majors, the picture was equally flat. He had not won an individual LIV event since Bedminster in 2023, sitting on a streak of 35 consecutive LIV regular season starts without a win. Questions mounted publicly about whether the less competitive LIV format had gradually dulled the edge that had made him one of the best players in the world. The player who had outdueled Rory McIlroy at St. Andrews and hit every shot in the book was now a player people had largely stopped talking about. Then came January 2026, and the decision point everyone had been waiting for. Brooks Koepka announced he was leaving LIV and returning to the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour responded by quietly launching the returning member program, a narrow path designed to allow 4 specific players back into the Smith was one of the 4. So were DeChambeau and Jon Rahm. The window opened on a Monday and closed 2 days before LIV Golf's first event of the 2026 season. The terms were severe: a 5-year forfeiture of equity, a $5 million charitable contribution, no signature event eligibility, no FedEx Cup bonus money. These were not the terms of a warm welcome. They were the terms of a structured punishment wrapped in an opportunity. At LIV's Media Day in Florida, Smith was asked the question directly. Was he going back? His answer was the line that defined his entire 2026. I have made my bed, and I'm going to sleep in it. I feel like I am in a really good place in my career, my life, my family life, and I do not need to change it. There was no anger in his answer. There was no fight. There was simply a man who had taken the money, taken the contract, taken a lifestyle, and decided that the price of admission back into the PGA Tour was higher than he would pay. He did the math and stayed. DeChambeau posted a cryptic message on Instagram fueling speculation, then walked it back at LIV's media conference. I'm contracted for 2026, so I'm excited for this year, he said. Rahm was equally direct. I'm not planning on going anywhere. 3 of the 4 eligible players had looked at the open door, done the calculation, and walked away from it. 3 months later, the calculation itself changed. In April 2026, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund announced it would no longer fund LIV Golf after the 2026 season. The numbers behind that decision were staggering. The Saudis had poured over $5 billion into the league across 4 years. The losses had reached nearly $500 million in 2024 alone. The chief executive of LIV had told the Financial Times that breaking even was still 5 to 10 years away. The Saudis had heard enough. For players like Smith, who had just turned down the PGA Tour's offer to return, the timing could not have been worse. The door behind them had closed. The room they had stayed in was now being emptied from the other side. The outside assessment of LIV's financial viability was equally grim. One high-level sports investment banker was asked whether the league would attract new investors. His answer was blunt. They still have large payment obligations, and they still have very large purses to pay out. So if you're an investor looking at this, I don't know how you step into it. An investor who currently holds a stake in an F1 team was even more direct. LIV is so far from cash flow break-even. The math is never going to work. LIV's most recent event in Mexico City earned an average of 49,000 viewers on FS1 during its final round, an event won by Rahm, arguably its most decorated player. Smith, true to his recent public form, did not flinch. He insisted LIV would survive past 2026. He claimed he had been given every assurance without elaborating on the source. I promise you will hear it first from someone else rather than me, he told reporters. Asked directly about retirement, he dismissed the question. I am 32, so I've got a while yet. LIV CEO Scott O'Neill told a press conference he was fielding investor. I had about a dozen inbound calls this weekend from potential investors, O'Neill said. It was a split between private equity, family office, and then your traditional high net worth guys who invest in sports and sport. Whether those calls translated into anything concrete remained, at that point, unanswered. Then came the announcement that cut deepest. The week before the 2026 PGA Championship, word broke that Cameron Smith had parted ways with Grant Fee, the coach who had been in his corner since Smith was a 9-year-old junior. They had built the swing together. They had built the short game together. They had built the chipping touch that won the Open Championship together. Theirs was a partnership in the truest sense, not just professional, but personal. Field was, by any honest account, as much a part of Smith's identity as the mullet. Smith confirmed the split at his pre-tournament press conference and did not dress it up. It was a terrible, terrible conversation to have. I've been seeing Grant since I was like 9 years old, and he's a really good friend as well, so it was tough. But I feel like I have done the right thing for him. He gave no further public explanation, but the context told the story clearly enough. 6 missed major cuts. No individual LIV wins in nearly 2 years. A swing that had become overcrowded with thoughts. Something had to change. The new voice in his ear was Claude Harmon III, son of legendary swing instructor Butch Harmon, who had mentored Tiger Woods for 8 of his 15 majors. Harmon also works with fellow LIV captain Dustin Johnson. Smith described the shift in approach with unusual clarity. It's not rocket science. I got to a point where I was thinking so many things in my golf swing that I couldn't hit the golf shot, which is never a fun place to be. He just really simplified it and made me think one thing rather than 1,000. The goal was not to rebuild Smith's swing from the ground up. It was to cut through the noise and let him actually play golf again. What happened next at Aronimink Golf Club in Pennsylvania was the most significant competitive moment of Smith's last 2 years. In round 1 of the 2026 PGA Championship, Smith birdied his final hole to shoot a 1 under 69. That broke a streak of 19 consecutive rounds in majors, in which he had shot 70 or higher. Small in isolation, enormous in context. He made the cut. For the first time in 7 major starts, Cameron Smith was playing on the weekend, and he did not just survive it. He closed with a 2 under 68 on Sunday, hitting only 3 of 14 fairways, grinding and scrambling, playing the kind of creative, craft-first golf that had defined him at his best. He finished at 4 under, tied for 7th alongside Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele. It was his best finish in 11 career PGA Championship starts. It feels great to play nice. You don't work hard to play crap, and it's frustrating, and the last couple of years have been frustrating. I feel like I've been putting in the work and not really getting anything out of it, he told reporters afterward. He was direct about what had changed. I made a swing coach switch a couple weeks ago now to Claude, and we just managed to clean up a few things that were perhaps a little bit off, and I feel like I've got a lot more confidence in my swing. Even out there today, under the pressure, I felt like I was able to trust it already. So lots of positive signs. The significance of that finish extended well beyond the scorecard. His guaranteed exemptions into the Masters, U.S. Open, and PGA Championship expire next. The clock is running. The U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills and the Open at Royal Birkdale are still ahead in 2026, and Smith will arrive at both with something he has not had in 2 years, confidence backed by results. He was not alone among LIV players in making noise at Aronimink. Jon Rahm finished tied for second. Joaquin Niemann finished under par. Dustin Johnson produced a 68 on Saturday. The performance of LIV players at this major drew comment even from Brandel Chambly, the former PGA Tour professional turned analyst who has been among the most consistent critics of the breakaway tour. I really miss watching Cameron Smith play golf. I've said all along he reminded me of a Tom Watson-type player, Chambly said, but he held his broader position. It's a fact. There's a before and after. We're not talking about 1 or 2 players. We're not talking about a small sample size here. We're talking about every single LIV player. Where does all of this leave Cameron Smith in the broader LIV story? The answer depends entirely on what happens over the next 18 months. The other major names who made the LIV leap have clearer paths forward. Koepka already went back. DeChambeau is contracted through 2026 and seems likely to fall back into the PGA Tour orbit when that contract expires. Rahm is the world's best player on LIV and will be welcomed back to the PGA Tour the moment LIV. Smith is the holdout, the one who insists LIV will survive when the financial evidence says otherwise, the one who openly admits he does not need the PGA Tour back, the one who is rebuilding his swing at 32 in the middle of a league that may not exist in 18 months. If LIV survives and finds new backing, Smith becomes one of its central figures in whatever form it takes. He is the face of its most successful team. He is the anchor of its most commercially successful event. A story of loyalty and conviction that ultimately paid off. If LIV folds, the picture is significantly harder. He is a 5-time PGA Tour winner and Open champion whose exemptions are expiring, whose return pathway has already closed once, and whose competitive standing would need to be rebuilt largely from scratch. The PGA Tour is under no obligation to make that easy. As one writer summarized the arc of LIV's story, some of these players wasted some of their prime idling away in non-competitive form. Smith's own words capture his position better than any outside summary. I can promise you, the fire is in the belly. It's just a matter of time. I don't think time is running out on my major career by any means. He is not a man who sounds beaten. He is not a man in denial. He is a man who made a series of calculated decisions, some under pressure, some against the prevailing advice, and is now committed to seeing whether those decisions. He fired the only coach he had ever known. He turned down the only structured return pathway available to him. He watched the funding behind his tour evaporate 3 months after he chose to stay. And then he went to Aronimink and shot 68 on Sunday in a major championship, hitting 3 fairways, making the putts that mattered, and finishing tied 7th with 2 of the best players on the planet. He made his bed. He is sleeping in it. The next 18 months will tell us whether the room holds.